Welcome one and all to the Stock Up Podcast, your one-stop shop for stocking up on the information you need to qualify for the Pro Tour. My name is Alex. I'm joined today by Jacob Negro. Jacob, sir, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you, Alex?
Good. Last weekend we played in Pioneer, right? I didn't play for very long, but I know that you made day 2 of the thing, right?
Yeah, I'll touch on that briefly. So yeah, I went 7-1 on day 1 with Blue Red Prowess, and I only changed a couple cards into day 2, and I went 2-2. So unfortunately I didn't get the invite, but I'm not that disappointed. You know, it's a pretty good record over the weekend. If there's anything I felt like I could have done differently, I mean, this is kind of a pure hindsight thing, I guess, but I think maybe Prowess wasn't a very good choice on day 2. I seemed
but
like
you liked it for day 1.
Yeah, and it just seemed like day 2 was really anti-Prowess. And I guess what I would say, and maybe I mentioned this last week, and talking to other people, and in fact, just as an example, once again, Arne Huschenbeth qualified, and he played a Blue-Red Lessons deck that I was actually in the Discord that created this deck, and I had access to the entire time. I didn't want to mention it out loud on the podcast because it's kind of their thing, but I did consider playing it. But this deck, I guess, would be in a category of decks where I think it has a lot of great play into the decks trying to beat Prowess while still being a cutter deck itself. And that's pretty cool. But the glaring issue to me is I think it's just not good against Prowess.
Gotcha. It's tough to pull the trigger on something like that because Prowess was all over the place.
Yeah, so I only played one mirror over the whole weekend, but basically what I tried to do with my Blue Red Prowess deck was give myself as many tools as possible to fight these anti-Prowess players without trying to cost myself anything in the mirror, which basically made me believe I should still play all 12 1-drops, because I think those were some of the better things to have in the mirror, just to make sure you can always play to the board, keep my curve low. You know, I think actually stuff like Stock Up was not good in the mirror on average, though obviously some mirror games become kind of grindy. So yeah, I was pretty happy with my list if I was going to play Prowess. And, you know, if a Pioneer tournament comes up again and there's no bans, then I'll definitely keep in mind what I did. You know, it's really funny. I had that one Prof's Eidetic Memory. And for those that didn't list last week, a key difference in my Prowess list is I did not play Experimental Synthesizer or Heroes Hangout. I played Opt and Consider and changed my mana a little. And I played one Prof's Eidetic Memory, which was kind of a hybrid of I just wanted another card in my deck that could cycle into another card, first of all, because Prowess kind of loves that. And I wanted kind of a Boomerang Basics payoff, but I also kind of liked that it let me play to the board a little. And, you know, if 12 1-drops in my deck, just going 1-drop into Profs is actually not a bad start to a game anyways. But actually, I beat the Jund's Cat Oven deck with Profs, where I really felt I guess, for example, I saw other people maybe felt similarly about the way they built their decks sometimes, and I spotted some Cryogen Relics in Prowess as maybe a card that you could play instead of Profs. Very similar, obviously. Better if you Boomerang Basics it. Kind of. You draw an extra card. I beat that, Cat Oven deck off the back of, Boomerang Basicsing my Profs, replaying it, and putting 2 counters on my Monk that had the Steel Cutter, and then not moving the Steel Cutter to my new Monks each turn. And I just amassed, a 7/7 trample that they can't chump block.
Yeah, Profs sounds a little better, to be honest. The problem with Relic in that deck is it's pretty slow and it adds more cards to your hand, but because it doesn't go to the board at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem as appealing.
I could believe maybe I could also put a Relic in my deck, because I did try playing with 2 Profs because I liked it so much, and it was a little problematic that it was legendary.
Right.
Because it's not broken, but it is pretty good, and I think definitely its ability matters a lot for how good it is, which means drawing 2 of them is kind of bad. Because the second one's just going to be 2-mana draw a card, which is kind of horrible in a Prowess deck, basically. I just don't think you can afford just that, which I guess makes me think I wouldn't really want the Cryogen Relic anyways.
I liked your deck. I played it a bit. My issue was I was on the ladder and I was winning with your deck and I was winning with my deck. So I just decided to play the Blue Control. And I did not do particularly well. I didn't even qualify. I waited till Friday to play in some things. And I kept going 2-1, 3-1. Kept getting gems back, and then eventually I lost, and then I just stopped. Or I lost on the first one. It's interesting from what you've described. Blue White Control might have been a good day 2 deck. It's probably pretty good against all the other High Noon decks.
Yeah, someone in that Discord I was in, they 7-0'd on day 1 with Blue White, but I know they didn't qualify. But their list was really interesting. They were Yorion.
Yeah.
And
do tell.
they had, trying if I can find it still. They had 4 Omen, 4 Cryogen Relic.
Okay.
4 Lockdown, 2 Star Cage.
Gotcha.
They did not main deck High Noon, but they just main deck 6 like Exile All of Prowess's stuff cards.
Yeah, and they use their relics or lockdown and relic.
Yep, and then only creatures in the main deck were 2 Horn Lockwhale, but they did sideboard Appas, which is kind of cool. You know, kind of the thing you were talking about. So yeah, it looked kind of cool. You know, they said they lost to Prowess, which was kind of upsetting, but also, you know, even if they said it themselves, even if they felt like they built their deck to be like 70% against Prowess, you're still just going to run into 30% games sometimes.
Yeah, I think I lost to Prowess once or twice, but I played against it like, 6 or 7 times, and then the deck I was beating a lot was I beat Green White every time. Appa and Aang were really good against them, and especially Aang when they would attack. I ate a lot of Thalias with Aang on turn 3. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I know. I think I saw Wyatt Darby qualified playing the Green White Company deck, but I don't even think he endorsed that deck. I just think that deck is really not good in Pioneer, to be honest.
Yeah, it doesn't seem super great.
I
lost to some random stuff, though. Yeah,
and I guess I lost game 2 to it twice over the weekend.
Okay,
but like,
I mean, it's decent.
Yeah, just
but it's so narrow.
Prowess. Like, I don't know if they think they're good against Prowess. I don't really know. In my opinion, like, I feel like maybe I'm 50% on the draw to win and just like a huge favorite on the play to win. And like it's just got to be one of the biggest disparities ever when you're playing with Academic Dispute versus creatures. Like, it's a new kind of thing, but like when I can play the board first and you just like have no choice but to start the game by developing creatures, if I have the Academic Dispute, it's just kind of over.
It's a blowout, yeah.
Like, and like I don't even have to get Boomerang Basics, it's like I get Academic Dispute, which draws another removal spell, and like just kind of a huge blowout.
Yeah, totally. That deck's probably pretty fun to play, Green White deck, and it's cool. So I'm sure that's where people were at with it. But yeah, interesting format. I feel like it needs some change. It feels like maybe Cutter is too good for that format.
I think Cutter would be the most likely banned card, and then
they could ban that. I mean, I guess they could just leave it alone until more cards come out. That could always work, but
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty concerned because I do think my current guess for what's going to happen in Strixhaven is they're not going to redo Learn, because I just feel like that's going to be a huge disaster for Standard, and it's kind of obvious. But
yeah, maybe they're not.
I think they're definitely going to print more lessons, and probably they might print a different way to pay off lessons than Learn, or just referencing them like Avatar. Right. And that's just going to make these Learn cards that are legal in Pioneer even better. So that might end up being a big problem.
They could put some Learn cards at like weird rarities that are terrible, maybe, but yeah, they might not.
Yeah, just the standard thing. I mean, yeah, if they wanted them to be bad and just for limited only, they could make the Learn cards too bad for standard. That's definitely true. But like, some slip through the cracks and it would be a huge issue. Like I think Academic Dispute and Divide by Zero and maybe even Igneous Inspiration, which was in that Lessons Pioneer deck, which is just a 3-mana sorcery speed lightning bolt with Learn.
Yeah,
those could all be cards I could imagine seeing play in standard.
Totally. Okay, well, we probably won't touch on Pioneer for a while, so that's why I wanted to ask you about it before we got started with our today's episode, which is Lorwyn Eclipsed top 10 cards. So what do you think of the set so far now that you've looked over it?
It seems pretty fun. I think my top 10 list was maybe, I don't know, like it wasn't that long that I had to shave off of, I guess I'd say. Which is not maybe a good sign compared to other sets.
Yeah, it feels like I actually shaved quite a bit, but I felt like the power level is like relatively flat. Like my top 5 are cards that I think are pretty guaranteed to see play, and then the next 5 are just like kind of synergy cards that might be a bit of a long shot, but would be really good in their decks. That's kind of how I designed mine. I like that the archetypes that are supported kind of would work together as a cohesive deck within the set. Things like elves and that sort of thing, even goblins. But then also there's some individually powerful cards that might just slot into tier 1 decks, and then maybe we could have the, tribal decks as tier 2 or whatever. That wouldn't be too bad. Okay, so let's get started. Well, first off, certainly the biggest impact here is going to be these Shocklands, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so we didn't want to include these on our top 10 because they're kind of boring and obvious. The Spotlight Series in Atlanta happened last weekend, standard.
Mm-hmm.
And it was won by Bant's Airbending, which
kind of a surprise.
Notice here, there's no Temple Garden or Hallowed Fountain currently legal in that deck, so it's going to get a huge improvement to its mana base. Right now, I would consider its mana base actually really bad. The person who won, I mean, congrats to them. It was probably a deck kind of under people's radars. I think it's kind of known in these like Badgermole Cub mirrors to be kind of good because people don't
they don't really interact
much,
with you,
and your combo kind of trumps everything. And I've played around with their deck a little bit. They added a card that wasn't in any list from Worlds, and it was 4 copies. It was Interdimensional Web Watch.
Yeah, I saw that card. Do you remember what it does off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's a 4-mana artifact, and when it enters, you exile the top 2 cards of your library, and you can play them until the end of your next turn. So kind of like a Reckless Impulse. But it also taps for 2 mana to cast only for spells. I don't know if it's from exile specifically or just outside of your hand. But yeah, so if you have something airbended, it just taps to cast that. It's also very good to airbend and recast. And when you're doing your infinite loops with like Appa and stuff, you could also just start airbending that and go through your whole deck. So it's another kind of victory condition. I've seen this deck in action, and it's really hard for them to only make infinite 1/1s, is all I'd say. They're pretty good at drawing their whole deck when they combo off.
Well, yeah, the combo really goes crazy, and they can often leave up like things in their airbended zone to mess with you on your turn too.
They should be able to just leave up all their Angs, their flash.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if they have an untapped land, they also can just infinitely earthbend it and kill you right away and airbend all your blockers. So
yeah, it's a pretty scary deck, honestly. I was kind of in a way, even though I think it's a cool deck, I was in a way relieved when it seemed like it wasn't that good. But now that we've got this new artifact in it that might be good, the format might have changed a little bit, or the meta, might have changed a little bit to where it's more inviting towards it. And then also it's getting a huge mana upgrade. Because, I mean, right now its mana's really bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah, mostly, their deck makes a lot of green mana. They don't have great ways to make the other colors and that sort of thing. So Temple Garden, Hallowed Fountain, and, these other lands are going to see play for sure. We've got some other 3-color decks that are going to appreciate them, Jessica Control, that sort of thing.
I mean, even Steam Vents is just going to be an improvement to these blue-red decks.
Totally, yeah. Steam Vents improvement there. And then, of course, Blood Crypt and Temple Garden might open something up because those colored pairs were really hurting.
Yep. Yeah, those two, the ally color pairs have really been hurting. So getting these 3 that they were missing will go a long way.
Totally. So we'll go on to a couple honorable mentions here. So why don't you start? Looks like you've got 2.
I grouped together Nameless Inversion, which is a reprint, which is 1 in the black for a Kindred Instant Shapeshifter Changeling. So this card is every creature type. Target creature gets +3/-3 and loses all creature types until end of turn. And the other card is Chomping Changeling, which is 2 and a green for a 1/2 Changeling. And when this creature enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So I grouped these together as kind of a Changeling cards that I think are kind of strong, mostly because they're Changelings. There's already Reclamation Sage in Standard, and there's certainly better removal than Nameless Inversion. But these might see plays because they're dragons, or the Chomping Changeling is a demon for Unholy Annex, or just things like that. So I kind of expect them to see play. One kind of cool thing you could do maybe with Nameless Inversion is if you kill or target your own Ouroboros with the trigger on the stack, even if it kills it, like you play Ouroboros and then go to combat, and with the trigger on the stack you Nameless Inversion it will remember that its power was 4.
Oh, interesting.
You could get lethal that way, and maybe a black-green Ouroboros deck. Or of course, if you untap with Ouroboros, you could just cast it on it and it won't die.
Yeah.
Then it'd be huge. But you might just generate like a surprise lethal that way.
And then otherwise, it's just a decent removal as well. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the Shapeshifter cards. They're going to fill a lot of roles. Chomping Changeling might see it play in other formats too. Gonna have
Yeah,
to try to remember that
one
exists.
thing I already noticed with Chomping Changeling is the airbending deck sometimes has like Cavern of Souls, usually just named Ally because it has some expensive things and it had these sideboard reclamation stages. But
Okay.
in any deck with Cavern of Souls, the Chomping Changeling is uncounterable off Cavern of Souls on any creature type. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you may as well do that. Could come up. There are, there's all sorts of, like you said, they're going to fill all sorts of roles. So you could even, I noticed that there's like what is the card called? Throne of the Grim Captain.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool card that people tried to build around before, and it was much too bad. But I mean, Shapeshifter is like the perfect mechanic for that, so maybe you could do something with that card. That'd be cool.
Yeah, maybe.
For my honorable mention, I chose Glenn and Landra's Answer. 2 blue instant. This spell can't be countered. Counter all spells your opponents control and all abilities your opponents control. Create a 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token with flying for each spell and ability countered this way. So I mostly picked this card because it looks like a commander card, I think, and most people will gloss over it for standard, but I think it might be a good sideboard card against prowess decks.
Like to counter all their spell and all their triggers and get a bunch of fairies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool application. Yeah, I'd certainly want to be casting this to get like 2 or more fairies.
Totally. Like if they just have some prowess creatures in play or maybe a talent and they cast a spell and you counter it and get like 2 or 3 fairies, it seems like it might be decent. It's uncounterable, so they can't just spell pierce it or anything like that.
That's true too, yeah.
And then of course if they ever print cards like Eldrazi or something again, this being round in standard, you might use it for something like that. So thought that was a cool honorable mention.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Alrighty. We'll go on to number 10.
All right, so my number 10 is Brigid Klacken's Heart, which is part of the cycle of like flip legends for the tribe kind of leaders. So this is 2 and a white for a 3/2 legendary creature, Kithkin Warrior. When this creature enters or transforms into Brigid, create a 1/1 green and white Kithkin creature token. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay green if you do transform Brigid. And the other side is still a 3/2. It does tap at X green or X white, where X is the number of other creatures you control. And then at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay white if you do transform Brigid. This might come, I guess, as kind of, to me, as like a package deal with Temple Garden, where maybe we get a green-white, like Ouroboros Badgermole Cub deck, and this might just be like a big mana thing. It also is 2 bodies for Collector's Cage, which might be one of the other appeals to maybe switch to white. This could maybe be, compared to Simic, I maybe could just believe Selesnya could maybe outpace the Simic deck.
Okay. This is blue. What is blue getting them right now? It's getting them like Quantum Riddler, and that's mostly it, right? And some sideboard cards.
Yeah, the counter spells are a big deal for sweepers, for sure.
They are. I mean, there's a couple white cards that are anti-sweeper, too.
The Riddler also is synergistic with their Spider Manifestation, as well as, I think that deck's just supposed to mulligan pretty aggressively to, a fast hand. So having Riddler in a deck that wants to mulligan aggressively is just a great pairing.
Yeah. What do you think of this card? I agree this card's strong, and it's definitely one of the better Kithkins. What do you think about you just like a Kithkin aggro deck?
I kind of shelled out a Kithkin aggro deck, and I don't think it would be very competitive versus the Llanowar Elves decks of standard, mostly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fair. There's certainly, lots of powerful cards. You mentioned the last episode that if some of these cards were printed 5 years ago, it'd be an easy deck.
Yeah, I mean, you can play a 1-mana 2/1 that when another creature enters gets +1/+1 into a 2/2 that or another Kithkin enters, you give a creature +1/+1 and trample into Bridges commands like clone my 2/2 and make a 1/1 Kithkin and like attack you for 10 and you're dead on board. But like that's still just like not interactive, and I think actually just a slower thing than what the Simic deck does.
Yeah, mostly slower than Simic, pretty bad against sweepers, all that sort of thing.
And a little bit more specific as to what you needed to draw, I think, as well. Like if you don't have that 1-drop, it's a lot different than having both Llanowar Elves and Gene Pollinator.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're more interested in this card just as an individual card for other decks, pretty much.
Yeah. Yep.
For mine top 10, I chose a Twilight Diviner. So this is 2 and a black, 3/3, Elf Cleric. When this creature enters, Surveil 2. Whenever one or more other creatures you control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of one of them. This ability triggers only once each turn. So this card seems pretty powerful to me. It makes it so... My first thought was when this card might not be good because when you're reanimating something, you kind of are already winning once you get it back. But I think actually what this does is it lets you reanimate less powerful things and have that be really powerful. So instead of having to rely on discarding this 8-drop from your hand and reanimating it, maybe you could play better cards in your deck and just reanimate smaller creatures and bring them back. And maybe even smaller reanimate effects. The hybrid evoke creature emptiness in this set can bring back a small creature.
Yeah,
that
so
works pretty well with this.
Helping hand, yeah.
It has a helping hand type effect. Yeah, 3 or less. So it doesn't work with, you can't bring this back and get a token, but if you have this in play and bring other things back,
yeah,
you can get them.
I had really wished that if this brought itself, there's an uncommon tree folk white-black hybrid that unearths, basically.
Oh, right. Yep.
I comboed this with that, and there was one game that I wished I could return this and just get 2.
Yeah, that'd be really broken. But, yeah, and then one of the things I like about this card is, in Reanimator decks, especially post-board, people can go after your graveyard a lot, and this is like a pretty decent just creature. 3-mana, 3/3 surveil 2. That's not terrible. And in a way, even besides graveyard hate, it can potentially set up a reanimation target with just the surveil, although obviously that's not going to happen all the time. So anything that doubles or creates tokens, I'm always aware of because they can lead to some pretty broken stuff. So
yeah, I mean, Bloodghast isn't standard. Maybe one day there'll be like kind of a dredgy type deck.
Yeah, it's nice that it works with smaller things and anything you could cast to your graveyard, that sort of thing.
Cast this and play a 0-drop and get double all your Vengevines in Modern.
Okay, there you go. That'd be pretty sweet. So that's my number 10. Alrighty, what do you got for number 9 for us, Jacob?
I have Moon Shadow, which is a bit more speculative.
Sure.
So this is 1 black for a 7/7 elemental with menace, but it enters with 6 -1/-1 counters on it, so it's going to enter as a 1/1. And whenever one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, while this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. I guess I could believe maybe this will see play in formats with fetch lands, because every time you fetch, you'll remove a counter from it.
Yeah.
I think you need to work for it more than just that, but maybe you don't have to be as vulnerable as like Death Shadow, and you can have other synergies with this that are kind of good. Notably, like, you could surveil permanents in your graveyard and that would work. You could discard permanents and that would work. And it can trigger multiple times a turn, but it can only remove 1 counter per an instance. So if you like mill 5 cards and mill 4 permanents, you're still only going to remove 1 counter. But if you mill 1 card 5 times and there's 4 permanents, build around potential. And I also think, unlike Death Shadow also, like, you could just play this early and have it attack as a 2/2 menace on turn 2 or whatever, and that's kind of a good floor,
Yeah, it's kind of more like a Delver than a Death Shadow.
Yeah, exactly. Like, things don't have to go perfect. You don't need to get this card to 7 for it to be good, right? You need to kind of threaten for that to happen as the game goes on, but you really just need to get it to like 2 or 3 right away.
Which you could do with fetch lands and maybe baubles or something.
Yeah,
the pitch elementals too is kind of like a spell that would put a permanent into the graveyard once they evoke. So yeah, this card's interesting. I agree that I think that it's pretty relegated to formats with fetch lands, I think. Especially with all the bounce in standard. Because otherwise, it's kind of slow. You have to, if you milled yourself every turn or whatever, you'd still only get 1 counter a turn. I also kind of missed this was an elemental on the first.
Yeah, there might be some
go about
things that matter for that too.
So I guess if you had some kind of mana base with caverns or something in an elemental deck, you could maybe play this. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny to me that this card's a mythic, but I guess it's because it's a 1-mana 7/7, and that's like kind of exciting. Well, my number 9 is Sig, Wonderwine Wisdom. 1 in a blue, 2/2. Merfolk Wizard, legendary creature. Sig can't be blocked. Whenever this creature enters or transforms into Sig, Wonderwine Wisdom, target creature gains. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, draw a card until end of turn. And then this is one of the 5 flip creatures in this set. It says at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay white if you do transform Sig. He stays a 2/2 that can't be blocked on the other side. And it says whenever this creature transforms into Sig, Wonder Wine, Shield, target creature you control gains protection from each color until your next turn. And then, of course, at the beginning of your first main phase, you can pay blue to get him back flipped over to the blue side. So this is another card where obviously it would be good in a Merfolk Synergy deck. I wouldn't expect a Merfolk Synergy deck to even touch a tier 1 spot in the metagame. But that being said, this card's still strong on its own. One place you could put it, for example, is like in a blue-black mid-range style of deck. The fact that it can't be blocked makes it really good with Curiosity effects and Kaido effects. And then also, if you just have a 1-mana creature on turn 1 and you play this, you get to draw a card right away. I mean, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I thought about the similar applications. I know we've even mentioned Dimir could maybe splash Voice of Victory in the past. So maybe, especially with Hollowed Fountain, we could have kind of an Esper.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Esper kind of shell,
Hollowed Fountain, Starting Town, maybe. That'd be something. The backside of this, I guess what it's really doing is it's like making one of your other creatures unblockable for a turn. It's kind of mostly what it does in some boards. It's kind of an odd ability, to be honest.
Thing maybe unblockable. It's also until your next turn, so you could block.
Maybe against like Pyroclasm effects, you could say red or something.
Yeah, and also like this can target itself and block anything if you wanted.
Okay, that's a good point. You could say green against a green creature deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed that this card's legendary. Limits it a bit. I don't think you'll see more than 1 or 2 of it. But it's a pretty efficient creature in a deck that could utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that's appropriately legendary for a lot of reasons, I guess, at least. It's a...
Yeah. No, for sure.
Been on Lorwyn, and also I imagine playing it in multiples, I imagine, would actually be really strong,
It probably would, yeah. Target itself and whatnot. I am starting to think it'd be cool if they just got rid of the legendary rule, but that's probably a conversation for another time. So that's my number 9.
Nice.
We can move on to your number 8.
Yep. All right, my number 8 is Vibrance, which is one of these Evoke Elementals. So this one is 3 and 2 hybrid red-green, so 5 total mana. It's a 4/4 Elemental Incarnation. It has Evoke for red, green, and it says when this creature enters, if red was spent to cast it, this creature does 3 damage to any target. And when this creature enters, if green was spent to cast it, search your library for a land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. You gain 2 life. So notably, that's any land, not a basic land. So it's kind of like Sylvan Scrying plus gain 2 life. And yeah, I mean, this is, I think, one of the stronger parts of the Evoke cycle. I think you'd want to really be in a deck that can spend the red on turn 2, maybe interact with the board. And then it's kind of like just a Flame Tongue Kavu that gains some life. Maybe you put weird utility lands in your deck. I mean, even just like, if there is an elemental deck in Standard, I kind of just think it might play this. It could get Cavern of Souls, which is kind of big, like a big deal when you're playing these kind of expensive, powerful, like 2-for-1 cards at the top end of your curve.
Right. And you can still like use the Cavern of Souls to cast the green and the red, which is nice. Like early if you need it to fix.
Yep.
Yeah, I like all these elementals. They're pretty flexible. I do worry maybe they're too much on the side of flexibility and not enough on the side of power.
Yeah, I was a little worried about that too. And then I guess for all these elementals too, something I'd keep in mind is maybe don't try too hard to evoke both modes early. Like, I would build my deck to try to have red, and like the Thornspire Verge goes the right way, for example, so that's nice. And then later on turn 5, I want to have both modes. But on turn 2, I'm not trying to get a land.
Yeah. I wonder if you could play this in like just a red deck or just a green deck.
I thought about that. They did kind of push some weird, really aggressive red elementals in this set. So I wonder if maybe mono red could be like a splash elementals type deck. This can go face too.
And have Vibrance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do people play Magus of the Moon in Modern still?
They do. And yeah, in Amulet, this is a weird maybe card you can play in Amulet that like is for the green half, but if you happen to face Magus of the Moon, then you could just spend 5 red on it and kill Magus. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, or even red. It's just like a green creature that you can spend red mana to lightning bolt the Magus. I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Okay, cool card. We'll move on to my number 8. If we ever, by the way, have cards that are on both of our lists, we'll go ahead. We'll mention them when they come up. That way, we're not repeating them. So my number 8 is Taster of Wares. 2 and a black Goblin Warlock. It's a 3/2. When this creature enters, target opponent reveals X cards from their hand, where X is the number of goblins you control. You choose one of those cards. That player exiles it. If an instant or sorcery card is exiled this way, you may cast it for as long as you control this creature, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. So again, this is a thing where this is very clearly good, mostly with goblins. I mean, you're not really going to play it by itself, to be fair, unless you have some other, like a lot of shapeshifters or something. Because it's like ravenous rats by itself. But if you have goblins in play, it starts to become more like, Cruel Claws Heist, or whatever the card that is in Standard. Goblins historically, have been good in Eternal formats a little bit. I know, I'll be honest, I don't know much about Legacy, and I don't know how popular Goblins is in Legacy, but I imagine this could be a pretty good card in a Legacy Goblins deck. And the Goblins deck in Standard doesn't look super promising, but there are some good cards in it, and I think it's probably worth trying. It has, I think, the best command of the 2-color commands. And yeah, I just think this card's really strong. So again, a little bit synergy based, as with the bottom half of my list is, but that's where I'm at with this one.
If your opponent had multiple cards in hand and you played this with a bunch of goblins and they had to reveal their whole hand and they had boomerang basics, and then you just basics to this.
Oh, that'd be so nasty.
Yeah.
You can also take lands with this, which is funny. It's like a discard spell that can take lands in a way. Especially if you see their whole hands.
It can't miss if, you just play it for one. They can't just show you a land and get away with it.
Totally, yeah. And there's been red-black lizard decks that are pretty decent in Standard, and one of the important cards in that deck was a lizard that kind of thought seizes them when it ETBs, and this is I think better than that. And there are other goblins in Standard, so maybe there's something here.
Yeah. Goblins, I guess, also is a type that could be supported in a later set very easily. Given their
That's a good point. It's one of the most popular types of Magic for sure.
So they could easily kind of be front loading kind of half of a goblin deck here and have plans to kind of fill it out.
Bring it to us later. Yeah. And you have a goblin on your list too. A little preview. We'll get to that.
Yeah, one issue I'll say, I did look at a lot of goblins type decks in Standard, is all the goblins before this set are kind of like mono red aggro type cards, and all the goblins in this set are kind of like aristocrats kind of cards.
Right.
So the previous goblins don't really help. We really want Umber Crawler Zealot, but a goblin or whatever is what, and you want you want
stuff.
Infestation Sage, but it's a goblin that makes a goblin. That's the type of goblins this Lorwyn block or Lorwyn set really wants to exist that don't exist right now.
Right. I will say this whole set in general has me pretty excited, but I think it's going to be pretty easy for them to support some of the cards they've made in the future. And when they do, I think they could be really good. So I have an eye out for cards that are just inherently powerful, even if the synergy pieces don't exist in Standard right now. So yeah, we can go on to your number 7, Jacob. What do you have?
I have Lockmare. So
interesting.
Yep, 1 in the blue for a Horse Serpent. It's a 4/5, but it enters with 3 -1/-1 counters on it, so that's a 1/2. You can pay 1 in the blue and remove a counter from this creature to draw a card. And you can pay 2 in a blue and remove 2 counters from this creature to tap target creature and put a stun counter on it. I kind of think this card might be more of a sideboard card, but it's kind of in that category of a control deck, including Blue-Red Lessons maybe, that wants kind of good blocker sideboard cards, if that makes sense. Where it's kind of in the space of Quantum Riddler, but it's a little bit easier to develop, especially versus a deck that might not have removal like Simic. And you don't have to play for card advantage. You can play for the board. But also in, control mirrors, you could just say, I'm not going to play this till turn 4 or whatever, and make sure I get my counter off it right away.
Yeah.
And I just think, it could be, a 4/5 that draws 3 cards. It could stun a creature and do a thing. There's also the new card Reckoning Hex, which destroys a creature with CMC2 or less, but you can blight as an additional cost to gain 2 life, so you could get more counters back on this in like a blue-black control deck or something. So I just think it might see play in that kind of role.
Yeah, I really like this as a sideboard juke, potentially. It reminds me of, like, Reckoner Bankbuster, which was a great card.
I just like that it can block, which I think is, like, these sideboard... Like, versus a really kind of green aggro deck, which there's a lot of right now, I kind of like that maybe you could, like, play some removal, but then when this comes down, you, like, stun something and stabilize and then get a card off it, you know, stuff like that. And then it's big.
Yeah, it would be good in a deck where your opponent's small creature removal is not good against you, so then when they board it out, you have this card that really requires... the thing that would make this card bad is if your opponent could just kill it really easily. Because it's sort of this thing that wants to sit and play, and you want to kind of use its abilities at the end of the turn when you leave up mana, that sort of thing.
It's only bad in that if they're pressuring you into playing it early, right?
Sure.
You can always
it's not even terrible there
or whatever, right? And
yeah, it is good late. Yeah, I mean it could be really good. It's a cheap even main deck and something. I'm not sure what you would do, what main deck exactly, but it is a really cheap card that's good, like decent early and good late. So that's something to look out for. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We'll move on to my number 7. We don't have any crossover yet. That's interesting. We usually have a decent amount of crossover. I've got Bitterbloom Bearer. Black, 1/1, flash, flying, fairy rogue. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token with flying. So obviously reminiscent to Bitter Blossom. I think if they printed Bitter Blossom in this set, it probably wouldn't be good in standard, but this thing might be better than Bitter Blossom. It does cost black, so that's rough.
That's his biggest strike against it for me.
Yeah. Otherwise, it seems like it'd be pretty easy to slot into like blue-black mid-range, and you might still try that, but it might not work.
Though. The Verge going the wrong way, it makes it really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no Darkslick Shores either.
Right. If it was just for that, I probably wouldn't have it on the list, but I actually think it might be good in a black-white deck.
Yeah, we were talking about last week. This could work both with Sephiroth and to some extent Enduring Innocence, though that's kind of slow. You still have to wait a whole turn to... It's not going to get you the card right away on turn 3 or anything.
No, it is slow. Although, you know, if you could flash it in later, once the Enduring is already in play, you get a card right away, so that's nice. You can get do it at the end of the turn, get a card, untap.
And then another card in your upkeep.
Another card. And then the Enduring Innocence also has lifelink, so it can get some of the life loss back. So that's the biggest reason I like it. I do think blue-black midrange is probably going to try to incorporate some fairies, some of the fairy cards.
Yeah.
Not that this has any particular synergy with it, but it's just like another flash creature, and maybe they moved more towards black. So yeah, I like this card. I have hopes for it. I don't think it's going to be crazy, but I think it might fit pretty well in some token decks, and there's also some other token support on my list that I like that we'll get to a little later. Oh. Okay, so let's move on to your number 6, Jacob.
Yeah, so my number 6 is Hexing Squelcher, which is a card that is kind of controversial online for commander reasons, it seems like, but I think it might be kind of a solid role player in standard. It's 1 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Sorcerer. It says this spell can't be countered. Ward, pay 2 life. Spells you control can't be countered. Other creatures you control have ward, pay 2 life. So I like this mostly for the ward, pay 2 life, plus kind of taxing on your other creatures. And I specifically have like a mono red deck in mind, or something very aggressive, especially given the mono red deck in standard right now is already doing kind of similar things with the Needlehead or the Magebane Lizard. And they're kind of burn heavy in general. There's also kind of a red-white burn deck popping up. Kind of still a creature deck, but has Boros Charm and Lightning Helix. And I think the can't be countered is also pretty relevant for standard right now because these red decks are using Nova Hellkite. So, kind of one of the cleanest answers for the blue decks against Nova Hellkite is just to counter it. They don't, obviously they could have Combustion Technique as lessons, but some of the other decks don't have anything, and the mono red decks also sometimes combining Soul Guide Lantern with like Nova Hellkite, so it doesn't die to combustion technique. In addition to that, and I think this will be on both of our lists, Spell Snare is in the new set, and a 2-drop that can't be countered is just inherently protected against Spell Snare. I think, pretty much with the exception of Pyroclasm, this is always going to get 2 life out of your opponent.
Yeah. I do like it in a deck where I like the idea of a mono red deck where sort of your bigger creatures are also slightly protected, both from counters. Obviously, blue red, one of the ways that they deal with Nova Hellkite, like you said, Flash Freeze, those sorts of cards. The fact that this can't get hit by Spell Snare is actually a pretty big deal, I think, because Spell Snare in this format is going to be relatively telegraphed, especially early. I think people are going to be leaving up on blue. It's not like in older formats where people have fetch lands and they could have anything. So you could just sort of choose to play this 2-drop into Spell Snare. It won't be countered. That could be annoying for your opponent. And then, the tax could come up. I do think this card is maybe overblown a little bit. People seem to be, people get scared of this kind of card when it, has so much can't be countered text, but it is a 2-mana 2/2.
Having played some competitive Commander myself, I will say that, like, yes, it's true that in a 4-player 40-life game, the goal is kind of to combo kill the whole table, and so like to play an uncounterable card that says the rest of your cards can't be countered does probably warp what needs to happen. But I think what I just described being the goal of Commander is kind of why I hate it anyways. So
sure, yeah, especially competitive Commander, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's good there, I don't know, but yeah. And I think another thing that could push us over the top potentially and Constructed is that it's a goblin. So, I mean, you're not going to have a ton of playable goblins, and this is definitely going to be a playable 2-drop for a goblin deck.
And I guess, I just had a thought about the current mono red decks and how they kind of like, they're playing Emberheart Challenger and sometimes Full Bore, and admittedly, like, the Full Bore protecting from red removal is pretty relevant, but they don't actually, like, support the Emberheart Challenger too much.
Not anymore,
that's 2 haste, and, it can get in more damage, but I could see playing more of, like, it's weird to say Punisher cards, but they've kind of pushed the red Punisher cards to actually be kind of okay rates. So I could see just, not playing any pump spells, getting rid of Emberheart Challenger, playing this instead. It pairs well with Magebane Lizard, just stuff like that.
Yeah, I wonder if you could pair this with maybe green to get a little bit of protection for your kind of like Punisher cards. They all have 2 toughness and stuff. Like, this might be good with the green talent. Just get a little bit of extra annoyance going for your opponent. But yeah, because I would say the biggest problem with this card is just that, you're developing a 2-mana 2/2, and sometimes your opponent doesn't even care.
I talked about counterspells being a thing that's kind of weirdly good against mono red, but that's purely a post-board thing. So if anything, this could just be a really annoying sideboard card.
Yeah. And you might find spots in other decks in Standard throughout its time where you're a combo style of deck or a really big deck, and you've got red, and you could sideboard this. It might be good against a counterspell deck. So yeah, we could go on to my number 6, and I have Mutable Explorer. So 2 and a green, 1/1 Shapeshifter Changeling. When this creature enters, create a tapped Mutavault token. I have a confession. This card I was going to put on my list maybe 10th or even honorable mention, and then I listened to the midweek metagame podcast this week, and Gabriel Nassif said it was the best card in the set, so he's convinced me a little bit. I've bumped it up. I do think it is going to be a pretty solid role player if there is any sort of tribal decks in green. Obviously, it could fit into elves. It could even fit into merfolk, because merfolk's likely to be blue-green, because if you remember from the last time we had merfolk in Ixalan, those merfolk are blue-green based, and they have some strong cards.
Yeah.
Elementals, that sort of thing. It also works well with the champion style of cards, where it just sort of leaves around this 1/1 for you to exile if you don't have a card from your hand that you want to exile, and then you can cast it again if they kill it and get more Mutavault tokens.
Yeah, Ben Stark played the Golgari Dragon stack at Worlds, and I feel like this would slot right into that too. Being a dragon to reveal. Maybe you can overlap it with Unholy Annex and Soulstone Sanctuary, something like that.
Totally, yeah. It's funny. Shapeshifter has all sorts of applications you sort of don't realize until you start thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like there's this card, Throne of the Grim Captain. I thought of as an example that shapeshifters are really good with, and that's not exactly a super great card, but there are things that come up in that vein where shapeshifter just can be a huge linchpin for your deck. And I mean, this card provides two. It provides two shapeshifters, one card, and it's like a decent rate card that ramps and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of it.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not going
seems
to call
pretty
it the best card
solid.
in the set, but
Kind of a awkward, development turn. I'd say to the turn you play it might be a pretty weak turn. It's the biggest issue with this card.
yeah, I agree. It's funny. Wood Elves used to be a really good card, but I guess we're past that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Overlord, the green Overlord, remember, doesn't see a ton of play in standard right now, and it has a lot of benefits over this.
Yeah, I don't think the Green Overlord really is very good without Up the Beanstalk and Zur, so
Exactly, yeah. So this definitely needs something else. You're not just gonna play it on rate, but I think enough synergies could get there, and it could see enough play, even in small numbers, in enough decks that I wanted to put it on my top 10.
nice, yeah.
All right, what is your number 5? We're in the top half now, starting to get to the good stuff.
Yeah, my number 5 is Ajani Outland Chaperone, which is Planeswalker, 1 white white Ajani, starts with 3 loyalty. It has +1, make a 1/1 green and white Kithkin creature token. -2, Ajani deals 4 damage to target tap creature. And -8, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your life total. You may put any number of non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from among those onto the battlefield, then shuffle. I don't think the ult is really something I'm considering with this card, though maybe if it makes its way in the sideboard of a smaller white deck, that would be true. But I'm kind of really looking at this as a control card, because my goal with this card, if I were to play it, would be to interact with the board on turns 1 and or 2, and then play this either on an empty board or on a board of only a tapped creature. And I kind of think that's a really powerful thing to do, even though the upside is not amazing. I think it's kind of annoying if you can keep playing the game with this thing constantly generating 1/1s, and if they attack it or you, and you chump for it or whatever, then you could -2 and kill another creature. So it might be really hard to kind of play against if you can get it on the board when it's clear.
I love this card. So I've got it on my number 2 slot. So I similarly think it's very good.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Liliana the Veil, where it's this 3-mana planeswalker, comes down, it kills your opponent's creature. If you can set it up, it's not the easiest thing to do, but some of the time this will happen. It'll come down, kill your opponent's creature, and then you're sort of happy with that, and then you've just got this 3-mana planeswalker in play that can start upticking for value. I like it in control, and maybe you could play 2 in a blue-white control deck. That sounds like a pretty good number, but I think it could be a decent sideboard card in an aggro deck to dodge sweepers. It could be good in a tokens deck that I'm sort of imagining in standard right now, a black-white tokens deck.
Yeah, I mean, there's that mono white tokens kind of archetype is still around, and this
totally.
works both. It's awkward because their best cards also cost 3, but this would probably be right at home. And to be fair, I don't really think you want to play 4 of this card in any deck. The play pattern that I imagine this card being good is that it almost never dies. So, it obviously sometimes will get losted, or sometimes it will just die because you're behind. But if that happens, then I don't think another copy would be that good. But maybe it dies in a good way, where you play it -2, kill a guy, next turn +1, chump block, and then -2 and kill a guy again because you can't save it. And that'd be pretty good still.
Right, and standard goes so big nowadays. You can imagine someone ignoring this during the game and then them still beating you. It's not really like in the past where if a planeswalker was generating a creature every turn, they would lose. But if you're setting this up, if you've got Elspeth in your deck, that once your board is flooded, you can kill your opponent pretty easily. Or if you have enduring creatures that give you value also with this, it's pretty nice.
If you have this in play and play Elspeth, you could just get 4 tokens right away between the two of them.
That's pretty nice.
I guess it doesn't work with Ultima, but it's also pretty cheap, so you get to maybe develop this early and it lives, and then play Day of Judgment and just immediately get back onto the board.
If Blue-White Control starts playing this and Elspeth, that's a bigger nod towards Day of Judgment, I'll say, even though Ultima has its spots. But
yeah, as a side note, one thing I've kind of appreciated anyways is maybe main decking Soul Guide Lantern in the control decks. At first I thought, even if you didn't use your graveyard, that Rest in Peace would be better. But a key thing I noticed is that you can cast Day of Judgment against Badger Mole Cub decks and then exile the Earthbent lands from their graveyard, and then they won't come back. Whereas that doesn't work with Rest in Peace.
Oh, right. Yeah, kind of funny how that even works at all, but I guess it makes sense.
Is, using a second card to kind of do what Ultima does, but it also happens way faster, which is kind of more devastating to hit their land.
Right, and then a Lantern can be a good card in some matchups, so it's not not crazy to main deck. The other main deck card that I have sometimes played in Blood Control that might be better with this is Authority of the Councils.
Yeah, that's cool too. That's a nice combo. It also, you can get this back with Shiko. So if that kind of traditional thing comes back.
I mean, 3 mana is really cheap. We haven't seen Planeswalkers do like a ton in Standard. I guess we have Elspeth and Ral.
Yep.
But compared to the past, Planeswalkers aren't a big part of Magic so much anymore. But I don't know. We might be changing things up with this guy. He's quite good.
Yeah, there's no Monstrous Rage, That was also kind of really punishing for a card like this.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Ral is also maybe ticked up in popularity a little bit because of the lack of Monstrous Rage.
No Monstrous Rage, no Screaming Nemesis. That all matters.
Yeah, this would be bad against Nemesis too. Very true.
Right. It is bad against Nova Hellkite, but that's all right. It's got to have some enemies.
That's a pretty scary enemy, but it's not the most popular cards. But yeah, that's
yeah.
That's a board your Johnny out maybe moment, to be honest.
Yikes, totally. Okay, well, my number 5 is one of the evoke creatures. This is the only evoke creature I decided to put on the list, but I think it's the best one. It's Wistfulness. 3 and 2 green-blue hybrid, so 5 mana, 6/5 elemental incarnation. When this creature enters, if green was spent to cast it, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. When this creature enters, if blue was spent to cast it, draw 2 cards. Then discard a card, and then it has Evoke for 2. You brought this up to me. This creature is, for some reason, a lot bigger for a lot less mana than the other Evoke creatures.
Yeah,
it's a 6/5.
So not only do I think it's the best Evoke creature in the set, I think it's the best card in the set. That's my number 1 card.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you like about it so much? If you think it's number 1, that's crazy.
So it certainly helps that the Simic Ouroboros deck is either the best or second best deck in Standard. Seems like
right.
kind of undisputed. And I guess I just think, the Lessons deck is presenting these artifacts and enchantments as engine cards, and this is maybe a main deckable way to interact with them. And I think that's kind of a huge deal. It'll be hard to tell because this card might be too bad to main deck if it's not really important to get the green mode out of it. But so it's like a warping thing, where if like people just start main decking 4 of these in their Simic decks, like over Quantum Riddler, for example, which I don't think is what's going to happen, but just hypothetically, then Lessons might kind of die down. But then the idea of playing 4 of this in your main deck and your Simic deck might end up being pretty bad. So it'll be a weird kind of dynamic.
Even in that case, you probably just put it in your sideboard still, though, right? It's such a strong card.
I think the Simic decks will definitely maybe sideboard some of these. It's not tutorable off of the nature's rhythm to put into play to kill something, but I think it's just really powerful. It untaps the Spider-Man Manifestation still. It's just a big kind of value thing. It's a 6/5, which really relevantly can attack into Quantum Riddler, which is like a thing that board decks sometimes use to try to block. They try to stave off the board and have the Quantum Riddler to stabilize, and the fact that you could just play this and suddenly they'd have to like remove it or they're going to be taking 6 seems like a big deal. And yeah, I think if you're just in the market kind of for, a 2 mana card that could answer an artifact or enchantment and you happen to be green-blue, I don't see why you would play anything but this.
Yeah, I mean, it even, like, the disenchantability, right? It is a sorcery and it's green-green, but it's not just worse than other disenchants because on the other half, like, let's say you're just playing green, and on the other half you get a 5 mana 6/5. Yeah, that could do that. It's like a big Reclamation Sage, and it's also exile, which enchantments have been good in Standard for the past year, been quite good, and one of the reasons is the enduring creatures are pretty popular, and exiling them's really good. You will definitely find targets, and then at the end of the day, especially if you're green-blue, this can just be a giant Mole Drifter. That's also kind of a Reclamation Sage. Yeah,
there's also the Sultai Reanimator deck in Standard, which this can. You could evoke this to do the draw 2, discard 1, get a 6/5 in your graveyard for even though when it gets returns by Bringer, it won't have any ETBs. It's still just a 6/5, which I guess specifically playing that Spider-Man deck, it's kind of weird that some games you could like turn for the Spider-Man on the bringer, and that might not be good enough. So, something that develops a lot into your graveyard early, and then also gives you, it can kill Soul Guide Lantern. You can evoke it and stack the trigger to exile Soul Guide Lantern before it hits your graveyard, so you kill Soul Guide Lantern while putting a big thing in your graveyard. On top of that, you can pick this with Spider-Man, and because you spend mana and cast Spider-Man, you can actually get one of the modes. Unfortunately, you can't get both because no matter what, you're going to spend a black on Spider-Man. So you can spend, 2 blue in that cost or 2 green in that cost, and still have kind of a modal thing, which I think matters a surprising amount when you play that deck, that you have these options.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
That deck has 4 Bitter Triumph and 4 Awaken the Honor Dead, and it could have this and Overlord of the Baelmerk, and you could play a kind of interactive game sometimes and just say kill your thing, Spider-Man, draw 2, discard 1, or kill your thing again, just stuff like that.
Yeah, that deck looks like it's going to get some nice additions. My next card will actually be good in that deck too. I was watching a little bit of the early access event, and it's funny, these elemental incarnations, get around the like quote unquote scam thing that Grief used to do in Modern. Yeah. But I did watch someone go at turn 1 Spring Relief Drum, turn 2 Evoke. In this case, it was the blue-black elemental where you discard from your opponent's hand. And then they tapped it while it's in play with the Spring Relief Drum and cast Undying Malice on it.
Got a 6/6.
He got a 6/6, and I was like, it's pretty strong. You thought sees your opponent gets 6/6. And, this card might also be a piece in a deck like that if you were to build a scam, because something you could do is you could play, Starting Town, Cavernous Souls, and whatever the other creature type land that's like a weak Cavernous Souls is called, and it lets you evoke all these different elementals. So it could have a home in an elemental deck.
I'd have thought today about Modern with this too. I didn't quite think it would be like an amulet card, but I kind of realized it seems like an amazing Living End card, which is a deck that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Once again, when you return
for the blue mode, or are you looking to
both?
Both, yeah.
I've thought about main decking Foundation Breaker and Living End, but I thought it was a little too narrow. And
what does that card do?
It's a 4 mana 2/2. When it enters, destroy an artifact or enchantment, and as an evoke for 1 and a green. So it's kind of the reclamation stage that you often see. I think the mana is good enough in Modern that, like, in a 3-color deck, you can kind of pick to choose either of these modes on turn 2 very often, if it's in your opening hand, and you fetch accordingly. And then on top of that, I just think one of the best cards in Modern against Living End is Urza's Saga, because it's like uncounterable graveyard hate that plays to the board, and that's kind of like why I wanted to main deck some kind of disenchant effect, and it needs to be cheap. And this is perfect. On top of that, that deck has a bunch of green and blue pitch cards and no real good Simic cards to play besides Shardless Agent. So, like, getting to, I don't know, I could see playing 4 of these in Living Ends because it's just green and blue. It does everything you want.
Wow. Yeah, you're making me want to bump this up my list. Now, it's a Modern play, obviously standard play. I was kind of thinking of it as more of a ubiquitous sideboard option kind of card, but it does have a lot of uses, doesn't it? Potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Crazy card. Yeah, let's go on to number 4, which we, by happenstance, I noticed both chose the same card. Nice. So this is Formidable Speaker. I'll let you read it. I know you've been excited about this one.
Yeah, it's 2 and a green for a 2/4 Elf Druid. When this creature enters, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. And it also has 1 tap, untap another target permanent. And notably, this is John Emmanuel Dupraz World Championship card. A few years ago, these take a few years. I think he was there's been 2 more world champions since he won, but that's just kind of how things go.
We'll get to him.
Yeah, so super cool, kind of tutor, kind of toolboxy cards, but also, in standard, we have that Spider-Man deck once again that wants to discard cards and draw a very specific card every game, and they could add a few other things like Harvester of Misery or maybe Disruptive Stormbrood to add to kind of a toolbox package. And yeah, I just think it's super cool, and I think it's one of the coolest like invitational / Worlds cards ever, because I just think in every format people are going to be thinking about cool things they can do with this, and even if those things don't end up being good enough, it's still cool that it's on everyone's mind for a long time.
Yeah, this is definitely. I have to imagine this is going to be a commander and maybe even a cube staple. I worry about constructed now that I've thought about this card longer that it might be a little bit too like into the flexibility camp and then not a little bit too slow, to play a 3-mana 2/4.
Yeah,
But
that's how
I
I'm a little worried too.
yeah, but I still am pretty excited about it. I mean, you are tutoring for a creature and you can discard any card, so you can discard something that's like not even relevant to the game in a way that can be some card advantage, or you discard a flashback card or a card you want in your graveyard.
Yeah, another cool. Yeah, speaking of card you want in your graveyard, one that I feel like is really hard to discard in standard, that you really want to discard is Esper Origins.
Yep, and
So
that's
that's
one
kinda
of
cool.
it's a pretty good one of the better green cards in standard.
Yeah,
So, and it has have that problem, especially when I was building Unidex. I was like building Absent Unidex, and I just didn't have good ways to discard it. So this is nice. This could be good in a Unideck. Could be good in, well, it's almost certainly going to be good in the Spider-Man deck because it's just perfect. It could be good in an Elf deck. Not saying an Elf deck's going to be guaranteed to be tier 1, but you could build it in a toolbox fashion. I could imagine wanting to tutor the Glimpse of Nature, champion elf, where it's a champion elf and has Glimpse of Nature stapled on it. I could imagine wanting to tutor the 5-drop elf that kills something and then gives something plus X plus O equal number of elves in your graveyard, so you can maybe one-shot someone out of nowhere.
weirdly enough, not that I pay a lot of attention to Legacy, but if this was a one of in the Legacy Elves deck, it really wouldn't shock me as like a Zenith target because it also can untap Gaia's Cradle. So it's just like maybe it's still an elf too, So it's just kind of this middle ground thing that's like an elf that's going to draw another elf and could produce a ton of mana next turn is actually kind of something they might want.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. It's interesting. I was trying to think of ways you might use the untapability in standard and hadn't come up with a lot of stuff. Too bad there's no Gaia's
I always
Cradle
think
in
about
standard.
how this is kind of an interesting card with Soul Cauldron too, and it has an activated ability. You could untap the Soul Cauldron. There might be some weird things you can do. You could set up Soul Cauldron too. So maybe.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that as sets come out, you're gonna have to keep your eye out on because
Yeah.
it has such a powerful tutor ability. At least in theory. We'll see how it goes. It is still you're playing 3-mana 2/4. Might be a little slow, but in the right deck, I think it could be great. Honestly. So yeah, that's our number 4. What's your number 3, Jacob?
All right, my number 3 is Ashling Rekindled, which is another one of the flipped legends. It's 1 in red for a 1/3 legendary creature elemental sorcerer. When this creature enters or transforms into Ashling Rekindled, which is the backside, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Or sorry, that's the front side, Rekindled. It means when it transforms back into that side. So you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. And then at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay blue. If you do, transform Ashling. The other side is Ashling Rhymebound, which is now an elemental wizard instead of a sorcerer. When this creature transforms into Ashling Rhymebound, and at the beginning of your first main phase, add 2 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value 4 or greater. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a red. If you do, transform Ashling. So it can flip back and forth like the other ones. So the front side, you can get a little bit of value, maybe discarding something and drawing. But then it's kind of a weird, is it mana dork? You can play this on turn 2, flip it on turn 3, play a 4-drop, which is kind of, I'd say, not normal for a blue-red deck to accelerate themselves. And then next turn, you could play a 6-drop if this continues to live.
Yeah. Side note on the sorcerer to wizard thing, I think this is cool flavor. I think what's happening is Ashling is a sorcerer because her innate magic is fire, and then she probably in the story learns something.
I see.
Learns this blue fire magic, and that's how she becomes a wizard from learnt magic. If I had to guess, pretty cool card. I like that it's so cheap, and it does so much, honestly, for a 2-drop. You could even, on the other side, as you said, you don't have to keep flipping into that side to get the 2 mana. You get it every turn.
Yep.
And then if you're flooded on mana and you need more things to do, you can flip it back over to, do some looting.
Yeah,
so
and
to
on
speak, to find
the
things.
blue side, both triggers go on the stack at your first main phase, and you can stack them how you want. So you actually can pay a red, flip it, discard a card, draw a card, and then decide what colors you want to add. So you can see a new card before
That's
you lock in the
Yeah.
colors.
And it is any color, so you can get some fixing from it if you're playing 3 colors or something.
Yeah, and then I just think because it's such a kind of a reliable rummager, and kind of a cool build around that it kind of bypasses being legendary a little bit too. You know, like it's a card that I think if you're building around it, A, you're going to be super happy if you untap with it, and B, if you draw too many copies of it, kind of fixes it itself.
Yeah. All right, so this was a list or a card I wrote down when I was picking out all the good cards in the set, and the reason I cut it from my list is like I just couldn't really think of what to do with it. Like the backside could cast like a Quantum Riddler or something, but most of the blue-red decks are just so focused around cheap spells.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe the blue-red looting deck might add some like main deck Rowls.
Okay, just have something more to ramp into. Yeah, I mean it's nice to ramp into a 4-drop on turn 3 with this,
it
right?
also,
Out of your blue-red deck.
Just kind of sets up like Tiger Seal because it can flip and keep letting you untap your Tiger Seal by itself or stuff like that. Also, yeah, it is good friends with Riddler for a lot of reasons. Obviously, it can excel. You can just spend the mana warping it and then hard cast it later with some of the extra mana this gives you, and then rummaging consistently is also kind of the right order with Riddler because if you have 2 cards in your hand, you can discard a card and draw 2.
Yeah, maybe you could change some cards around in the looting deck. Maybe you cut the duelist or something to play some of these. You could even play, it is legendary, but it does loot, and that deck loots a lot, so maybe you could get away with playing more than 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think you could play 4 in most decks that would want this card, I guess.
Yeah, because it could always loot itself. Yeah, okay, pretty cool. It screams teamer to me. I know we don't have a teamer deck really at the moment, but maybe you could do something.
Yeah, I mean, I put 2 elementals that were in those colors on my top 10 list, right? And this card could cap excel. You can also evoke off the 2 mana if you wanted and still spend mana on other things. You can also play, so you can't unlock the room of Steaming Sauna, but you can hard cast Steaming Sauna with the mana, and that's also a blue-red card.
Okay, yeah, that's not bad.
So I just think maybe there's a lot of incident. Maybe you don't have to try too hard on this card, you know?
Maybe not. Yeah, and it's so cheap. Yeah, you're kind of convincing me on this one. I like it. I like it a lot.
Mostly, put 4 Riddlers in your deck is a good start.
Yeah, that's a silly card. Let me tell you what.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 3 is Requiting Hex. It's a single black mana instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may blight 1. So blight is you may put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. This says destroy target creature with mana value 2 or less. If this spell's additional cost was paid, you gain 2 life. So one of the things that's going on with this card is, first of all, at the moment, there's not really a great 1 black mana removal spell. There's Stab that people play, and that gets some of the same things that this gets. But at the moment, the way the format is, this is looking pretty good. You can kill, you can kill Ashling with it, right? Stab couldn't kill.
Yep.
You can still kill Badgermole Cub, you can kill Llanowar Elves, you kill all the cheap things. And then the additional cost thing is really kind of an additional benefit in a lot of the decks you could play this with, or at least a lot of the new cards.
A May, so it's not down.
Yeah, it's a May. Yeah, so first of all, if you're ever really needing life and you have just creatures around, you may really want to gain 2 life, and that could actually be quite good. I think
you'd be surprised how often I bet that happens.
Yeah, and that's with no synergies at all.
Yeah.
And this set actually has synergies with -1/-1 counters. So there's some pretty decent fairies in this set that I think have a good chance of seeing play in something like blue-black, which could use this Requiting Hex. There's the Flitterwing Nuisance.
Yep.
That's like a 1 mana 2/2 that enters with a -1/-1, and you can pay some mana and remove -1/-1 counters to get like an Enduring Curiosity effect for a turn. So you can reset that. You can reset Glenna Lenja Guardian. It's another flash creature.
My number 7, Lockmare.
It works with Lockmare, yeah, so a lot of blue cards, funny enough. And then there's some like Goblin.
A blue-black control deck, and maybe just the Lockmares in your sideboard, but you board those in, and you're against a small creature deck, and you're just like have this blocker, you're answering their things, you kick your Hex, and you end up drawing a card because you did it, and gaining 2 life. Also, I think blue-black, like, life gain can be a pretty big deal in that type of deck if you're a blue-black control deck,
Yeah. So I thought this card might be a decent standard role player before, but once I've seen the whole set and you see the synergies with the card, I think it's almost certainly going to see play, at least for a while, as long as these synergy cards are good.
This card was on my list and made its way off, but I think, it's hard to, unlike Cut Down or something, I just think it's maybe a little too narrow to put a bunch of copies in your deck, but maybe you can play 2 main, 2 side in your control deck or something,
Yeah,
It's just tough
maybe.
because even against the Simic deck, for example, that has a ton of targets. If you put 4 of these in your deck, I'm just really worried you're still going to run into, like, my opponent played Ouroboros and my removal was this card. And so
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe you don't put 4.
one point in favor of stab I thought about recently is I think this doesn't matter that much outside of like the black. If you played like a black green Ouroboros deck and you were playing mirrors, is you can stab Ouroboros to prevent it from working for a turn.
It's like a stifle against
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Which even works
Yeah.
if they played it once while you were tapped out, and it's a 2/4 on the next turn. You even have like a second window to make that play, which is kind of neat.
Something that might be biasing me, I know this is a little different, but when I play blue-white control, C-Rip is like one of the most important cards at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
And, C-Rip hits more things, right? But
Yep.
it's made me realize just how important killing small creatures is in this format. So I think Requiting X will probably be a main deck card, like not necessarily a 4 of. And also, if you're playing blue, Spell Snare might compete with it a little bit, so you might play it smaller numbers of both because they both exist. But
Yep.
yeah,
There's
like
some
it.
weird black-red kind of decks that have weird sack outlet things too, and this being able to like sack something could matter.
Yeah, there's creatures that you could play that are better dead, and if you can't find a sack outlet, sometimes this will kill a 1 toughness creature of your own.
Yep.
Stitcher Supplier, that sort of thing.
Yep.
There's more blight synergies in the Goblin deck too, so maybe this could be good there.
Definitely.
Alrighty, number 2. My number 2, remember, is a Johnny. So we don't have to talk about that one again. What is your number 2?
My number 2 is Spell Snare, which is a reprint, but not one we've seen in Standard for a very long time. Never since I've been playing Standard, even, to be honest. It's a single blue for an instant, and it says counter target spell with mana value 2. So we have a bit of a precedent on this card because it's never been like dominant in Modern or anything, but it has seen a lot of play in Modern, and sometimes more at certain times or in certain decks. Especially if you're lacking things to do on turn 1, this is a great card to have when you're on the draw.
Yeah, I mean, this card is nice. And it has, speaking to Modern, as long as Modern's been a format, I'm pretty sure it's been good, right? People still play it to this day.
Yep.
The thing that's so nice about this card is 2-mana cards are, as you go down the list, we're kind of getting power crept out of playing expensive cards, but 2-mana cards have a long way to go before,
Yeah.
they're basically always going to be good in Magic. And this is always going to trade up on mana against a 2-mana card, and it's going to prevent any ETBs, get any type of permanent, that sort of thing. And even as games go on in the late game, sometimes a card like Requiting Hex will become bad because it only kills small creatures. Oftentimes, Spell Snare, even in the late game, is going to be good because your opponent's going to have 2-mana cards, Negate or Doomblade or things like that this is always going to hit.
Yeah, or, like the blue-green deck uses Spider Sense to counter sweepers, but if you were a control deck, you could maybe set up playing a sweeper with Spell Snare up. Stuff
Right,
like
and
that.
1 mana is a huge difference compared to 2 when you're trying to do something like
And
that.
it's still a counter spell that you're happy with, hey, Badgermal Cub or whatever early. So it's not like it's not like playing Dispel to accomplish that. It's like a card that works.
Totally. So for all these reasons, I chose Spell Snare as my number 1 card.
Yeah, fair enough.
I just can't imagine the entire time it's in Standard that whenever you build a blue deck, you have to think about if you want some copies of Spell Snare. And the answer is not always going to be yes. It's kind of a reactive card in a sense. Like, I'm not sure the Lessons deck will play it in the main deck. It might. I'd certainly want to try it in some small numbers. But yeah, it's a reactive card, but it's just, it's so good at what it does. And I think in Pioneer also, it's going to be much needed. There's so many good 2-mana cards at the moment in Pioneer. That Spell Snare will be nice against.
Yeah, going to be a huge impact on that format as well. One thing I'll say is I think, in Modern you have the fetch lands, especially now Surveil lands, to kind of disguise it. Or maybe even if it's, you revealed that it was in your hand. If your opponent didn't cast a 2-drop, you could still Surveil or do something. Or maybe your deck also has Lightning Bolt or whatever. And in Standard, there might not be that many ways, and I would just be hesitant playing a lot of these or not having anything else to do. Maybe you want to, include some ops, not even like 4, but maybe just ops will play a little better with this in your deck.
Yeah, and opt is a pretty strong card. It's not that big of an opportunity cost to just put it in your deck.
But just some examples I had are, let's say you're against Lessons and they play Storm Chaser's Talent on turn 1, and you pass with this on turn 1, even if they don't know about it. They might, instead of playing Artist Talent, they might say, oh, I don't want to get spell snared right now. I'm just going to do my Boomerang basics and my talent again. That's pretty bad for you. The green decks have, land or elves, so they might just play a 3-drop. If you play this into land or elves, even though they really want to go like Badger Mole Cup plus 2-drop, they might be kind of savvy.
Yeah, and so one of the ways you might want to build with Spell Snare, if you think it's really important to have in your deck, is, well, first of all, it's going to play better in decks that use the blue first verges, like blue-black.
Yeah.
Because that's often something you can play in turn 1 and then leave it up anyways. But if you're just reducing overall the cost of leaving up Spell Snare, then your opponent not doing anything, so like if you have less tap lands, if you have more in tap blue that you would have played or could have easily played anyways, that's something you can do.
Yeah. Blue-white really gets the short end of the stick on this card, I'm going to say.
It does, yeah. You might not be able to play very many.
And they don't have Seachrome Coasts, so they really only have a Island and Hollowed Fountain to represent this on turn 1. And I'll also say, if you put this in your deck, you really want to be being able to represent this on turn 1, because if you're on the draw, that might be your best window to even use it in a game. Even though we talked about how it can kind of scale, you just might lose a game with this in your hand if you can't cast it on turn 1 on the draw. And blue-red, even though its Verge goes the wrong way, they have Spiral Bluff Canal. So there's a reason the Lessons deck is playing a bunch of blue 1-mana cards they want to play on turn 1. It is totally fine for them because Spiral Bluff Canal is pulling a lot of the weight.
Yeah. So maybe you're going to have to, if you do choose to play this in blue-white, which I'm probably going to try it at least, you might have to play something more like 2, instead of 3 or 4, because you might not always be able to play it turn 1 on the draw.
Yep.
Even though, again, it could still be a strong card overall. All right. Well, that's our top 10. I think we did pretty good. But, I always think that when we do them and then we miss Quantum Riddler or whatever. So, were there any other cards you had on top of your mind that you want to talk about?
Another Evoke Elemental, Catharsis, though not the Catharsis, sorry. Emptiness, the white-black one.
Mm-hmm.
There's some cool things you can do with that, but they involve some weird setup. And it's not that powerful. The cool things I have in mind are using the white-white mode. So this card is 2 hybrid white-black for a 3/5 elemental, and when it enters, if white-white was spent, you return a creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and if black-black was spent, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature, and as evoke for 2 hybrid white-black. Things that have been pointing out to me is, if you got Aang, the 3-drop Aang with Flash in your graveyard, you could evoke this, return Aang, and then airbend Emptiness before it gets sacked to evoke. And then it's airbent, which means you can spend 2 mana on it to cast it for real and still get a mode out of it. And that's kind of cool.
Okay. Yeah, that is cool. And this card is also decently flexible. We'll have to see if it's obviously good that it's flexible. It might not be pushed enough power level wise. We'll have to see.
Another cool thing, the 3 -1/-1 counters, even though it's sorcery speed and it's not going to answer Ouroboros, and they're still going to get a combat out of it, if you cast this to put 3 counters on Ouroboros, it kind of kills it, at least for the time being. It'll be a 0, or it'll have negative power.
Right. One other card that I thought of that was pretty cool, that's going to be pretty hard to be good probably, but it's so powerful you might want to try.
The Fairy Elf?
Yeah. Fairy Elf, yeah. 2 black, green, blue, 4/5 flying. Whenever Marlin or another elf or fairy you control enters, exile the top 2 cards of target opponent's library. Once each turn, you may cast a spell with mana value less than or equal to the number of elves and fairies you control from among cards exiled with Marlin this turn without paying its mana cost. So green, green, blue, and black, that's a pretty decent base and standard. And if you play this with not even that many elves and fairies in play, and you start exiling cards to your opponent's library, you can just cast them to free. This seems pretty powerful.
Notably, it's only cards you hit that turn, so it is a short window, but still.
It is, let's see, it's once each turn. It is once each turn. So I think the cards that you exile stay exiled.
They stay exiled, but it says you may cast one that you exiled this turn.
Oh, I see. So you can't play an instant on your opponent's turn?
Yeah, and if you play Marilyn, hit something you can't cast next turn, play some elves and fairies, you're only gonna hit the new things each turn. That like after the end of your turn each turn, any cards this is exiled are basically permanently exiled and no longer part of your options.
Okay, I missed that part. Well, you could like flash in a fairy on your opponent's turn
Yeah.
and then use something. So
Yeah.
that's not bad. I mean, it works good with the fairies in general. Works good with elves in general. Like to go wide. The Bitter Blossom Bearer
Yeah.
goes wide. It's pretty good with this. So definitely a card to try. I mean, that could be really really powerful casting things without their mana costs. So that's another card I consider putting on the list. But obviously, it's pretty narrow. Okay, so cool. Lorwyn Eclipsed. I'm excited. Thanks everybody for watching. I want to remind you that you can follow us over on patreon.com/stockuppodcast. Costs $1 a month to get all of our exclusive content. Thank you to all our patrons over there, by the way, who are supporting us. And you could also watch us on YouTube, where you can see these graphics as we do them live. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks everybody.
And then, as per usual, as we conclude our top 10 list at the end here as a end credit scene sort of thing, we like to just touch briefly on how we did on our last top 10, just to see a progress report of sorts. So how did we do, Jacob?
I think we did pretty good.
Okay. We didn't miss anything huge.
The lessons deck, I mean, it was kind of our honorable mentions, and specifically I put Grand and Boomerang Basics in my top 10, which I didn't really have the lessons deck in mind, to be fair, but I do still think in when I look at the lessons deck now, and I've played a lot, I might say those are the two best cards in the deck anyways. Obviously Wisdom is a lessons payoff, but I think Wisdom is like, it's better than Stock Up in that deck or whatever. But if they had to play with Stock Up, but it's a lesson, they might be fine, I guess. Mm-hmm. Say. Like,
yeah, I guess
Grand and Boomerang Basics are so uniquely kind of good.
Yeah, I guess it's not a competition, but I guess your list is better than mine because you had those. My big mistake, I guess, was I overestimated Wan Shi Tong Librarian.
Yeah, it's kind of popping up a little bit more now because mostly in sideboards, but because of the landfall deck and also the decks playing Nature's Rhythm, it's seeing some more play again.
Yeah. So I always kind of thought it would. There was always a chance, of course, that it would not see play in Modern, even though I thought it might be good.
Yeah.
I just know the bar is so high for Modern, even though I haven't actually played a game of Modern in a long time, so my brain is sort of not caught up to how powerful it actually is, I think. So that's why I thought maybe it would be good. But I did think it would be better in Standard.
Or at the RC that I played right when this set came out. So.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure it's stood up since then.
Sure. I did think it would be better in Standard, even though it is seeing some play still. Maybe I guess what's going on is the card drawing is so good in Standard that this one's just not really what you want.
We both put options. Airbender Ascension, Aang, and Badgermole Cub on our list, and the Spotlight series is just won by a deck with 4 of each of those. So
yeah,
that's not bad.
I still like Aang as a cyber card in blue-white.
Abandoned Air Temple, I've seen people try. I've even played against it in the Pioneer deck, the green-white deck, but Ba Sing Se has kind of clearly been the winner. Kind of for exactly what I said, just it's getting
so far. I still think these kind of matter with the texture of the format. Like if white decks were better, Abandoned Air Temple could still be better.
But it is something to say there's like the kind of blue-red and Jeskai control decks, and you have this land that doesn't require anything to have been going right for you that game. You can just start activating it, and it's threatening.
Yeah. I put the Legend of Roku really high, and I still think that's a good card. I've got my eye on that one to put into future Standard decks.
Boros Energy in Modern, actually. And that might
that's what I was gonna say. I saw pretty early that people were putting it in their Boros decks. I don't know if it stayed. But yeah, decent sideboard card, right? Just a lot of card advantage for red.
Yeah.
The Legend of Korok ended up being pretty good.
Yeah, honestly, I think the biggest fault of that card is that there's a null. It is really
Me
popular.
too.
Yeah.
There's several times where I'm like,
Strong,
I should just
but-
have this in my sideboard. And then I'm like, but my opponent
I'm gonna get a null.
might have a null against me anyways, so
Yeah.
I don't want this.
Yep.
But yeah, in a lot of ways, that that blue guy is, better than Jace the Mind Sculptor. I was thinking about that the other day. Legend of Kuruk, might be, right?
Yeah, I've played with it in some decks on ladder, and twice now I have flipped it and done the Waterbend 20 in the same turn against a control deck, and it's thanks.
Oh, wow.
It's all thanks to having 4 or 6 maps from Get Lost.
It's anti-get lost tech.
Yeah.
Oh, get lost, our favorite terrible card.
I flipped it and then took my extra turn, went to my extra turn, played Frostcliff Siege and a bunch of spells, and killed my opponent with the unblockable spirits. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is a really cool card. It flips into such a powerful creature.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing. It's kind of cool with Frostcliff Siege as a potential win con for a blue-red shell, but it's again, it's very annullable and costs 1 more mana at each spot than Artist Talent plus Monument. So it's pretty tough.
Yeah, it's really too bad that it's going to be in standard with a null the whole time.
Yeah.
Even disenchants aren't necessarily that great against it because at least you would get a preordain, but a null is just brutal.
Yeah.
1 mana counters it. Maybe you could play it with what's the Squelcher? You could play it with the Squelcher. Play blue red. Protect it from a null.